and we are very confident our employees will finish strong, just as they did at Vermont Yankee. Our primary focus is on continuing the safe, secure, and reliable operation of the plant through its remaining years of service. Keep in mind that Pilgrim will operate under the watchful eye of NRC inspectors at the site through plant shutdown and beyond. And we are working to ensure we continue to have trained and qualified professionals at Pilgrim to safely operate the plant. We began our comments here today by noting that this is a very tough day for our Pilgrim colleagues. I, along with Tim Mitchell and John Dent, we're all with our Pilgrim team this morning to deliver the news. We did our best to answer their questions and to provide assurances that we will work very closely with them over the coming weeks and months as new questions arise. We also committed to provide support for the team at Pilgrim to ensure safe and secure operations. I have full faith in the team's ability to do that. With that, I will now turn the press conference back to Laura.
Thank you, Bill. And I'll invite Tim Mitchell and John Dent to join us. So we will now open up the question and answer portion of the press conference. Just so folks here know, there are people that dialed in through a conference call line. So we will be alternating between folks in the room and folks that are on the conference call line. Again, if you are here, please identify your name, your news outlet, and wait until one of the folks that has the microphone comes along. So with that,
Excuse me for one. Before we begin, we just want to give the operator, if she can hear me, a chance to explain to the people on the call how to queue up questions. So please do that, operator.
Thank you. Those of you on the phone line can ask a question by pressing *1 on your touch-tone telephone. If your question has been answered and you wish to remove yourself from the queue, you may press the # key.
Thank you very much. Just a few quick clarifying questions. If you guys could just please tell us your name and title and spell it for us, so we.
Sure. It's Bill Mohl, M-O-H-L, President, Entergy Wholesale Commodities.
Tim Mitchell, M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L, and I'm the acting chief of the bureau.
John Pilgrim.
For the Entergy Pilgrim.
John Dent, D-E-N-T. I'm the site vice president of Pilgrim.
Thank you very much. Just two quick clarifying questions. Sorry, my name is David Abel. I'm a reporter at the Boston Globe. Thank you so much for all your time. Two quick clarifying questions and then one larger, broader question. First, I think you said, is it 600 or 650 employees at Pilgrim?
I think it's actually about 630.
630. 633 today?
yes, as of October 1st.
Okay. And we had discussed earlier, and I don't know if you had a answer to this question, how much longer the plant will continue making its $10 million payments to Plymouth. Do you have any further insight to that?
No, we have to follow up on the actual agreement in place there. Obviously, we'll continue to meet our current commitments and work with the stakeholders as we go forward.
Okay, and this is the larger question, sorry. The larger question is this. You had said that you walked us through this slideshow of the economic forces that are making it very difficult to run a merchant nuclear plant. Was this decision something that you expected to make for a while, for months now, or really my question is this, what role did the NRC's decision to downgrade the safety rating of the plant play in the timing of this decision?
Very good question. As I said, we evaluate each one of our assets on an annual basis. The key driver in the timing with this decision is the fact that we had to make notification to ISO New England by yesterday as to whether or not we wanted to commit to participate in the auction, which begins June 1st, 2019. So as I said, it was really the overwhelmingly negative economic picture, which was the key determination. Obviously, increased operational costs associated with moving to column 4 are a consideration, but clearly not the key driver in this decision.
Bill, I have a question for you. Bill Shields on Channel 4. Maybe it's for Tim, I'm not sure, but the fuel, what's already spent and the fuel that's actively being used, what happens to that? Does that stay on site indefinitely? Does that go to Nevada?
No, so let's just take an example of saying that we actually shut down the site June 1st, 2019. We then go through a process where we remove the fuel from the spent fuel pool over a period of time. That time is approximately 5 years. Okay. At that point in time, during that period, that fuel is placed in dry cask storage and stored at the site on a dry fuel storage pad. We obviously then are awaiting a decision by the federal government on what happens with the Yucca Mountain repository. You know, we have paid millions of dollars into that account to have the ability to store that fuel at Yucca Mountain. But as I think as everybody is aware, that is clearly a point of contention that is debated in Congress at this point in time, and there's a lack of certainty. So, but we are very confident we can safely store that fuel on site in the dry cask storage until that issue is resolved.
In perpetuity?
Excuse me, Bill,
Yeah.
I'm Frank Mann from the Old Colony Memorial. Just wait for the mic, please.
Hi, Frank Mann from the Old Colony Memorial Wicked Local. You bring up that issue of the storage, and one of the things that's been very current, both at the state level and in town as well with the Revenue Idea Task Force, is fees for dry cask storage imposed upon the plant or imposed upon whoever has the resources, I suppose. So do you have any thoughts about that? Has there been discussion of those fees? And I know you're probably aware of them. In Plymouth's case, which is going to be talked about, it's on the agenda tonight at the Selectmen's meeting. They're talking about approximately $10 million a year based on the number of dry casks as well as fuel in the spent fuel pool.
Yeah, we're very aware of that discussion. I think we clearly do not support that type of tax, but we will have to work with the stakeholders as we move, throughout that process.
As I said, we have to be fair to those folks that are on the phone, so we're just going to take a question from one of them right now.
Our next question comes from Rebecca Smith with Wall Street Journal. Your line is open.
Thank you. I've got two quick questions, gentlemen. Could you tell us whether this has any bearing on what will happen with Fitzpatrick? That's question number one in terms of closure prospects. And then the second question is your decommissioning fund for Pilgrim regarded as adequately funded by the NRC?
Rebecca, this is Bill. I think we've made it clear that our Fitzpatrick facility in Oswego is in a similar situation, facing similar economics. And we have notified employees that we would make a decision on that facility by the end of the month. As it relates to our nuclear decommissioning trust, we have adequate funds in that trust at this point in time. I think approximately $870 million, which exceeds the NRC minimum requirement.
Thank you. Bill, can I try you just one more question? Could you give us any kind of a total for where you come out in terms of profit and loss on Pilgrim over the last 5 years, and how that would compare with what you would see ahead for the next 5 if conditions did not improve?
Rebecca, I can't really provide unit-specific economics. I can tell you that as we look forward, the cash flows are negative based on our evaluation, based on market conditions and cost associated with the facility.
Okay. Chris Legier from the Cape Cod Times.
Do you intend to put the plant into safe store the way you did Vermont Yankee? And what's involved in that besides just draining the systems and padlocking the door?
Sure. So when we talk about safe store, everyone needs to understand the NRC has a provision that allows for safe store. So basically it says you have to have that plant dismantled and decommissioned within a 60-year time frame after it shuts down. So I'll give you an example with Vermont Yankee. What we've committed with the state of Vermont is that when we have adequate funds in the trust to meet the total cost associated with the decommissioning and dismantlement, then we would begin the actual decommissioning process, and that could take a period of 5 to 10 years. So it really is based on a number of factors. Our intent is not to simply wait until the 60 years. However, the NRC requires us to ensure that we have adequate funds that are equal to or greater than the estimated cost of decommissioning.
Does that mean because the trust fund for Pilgrim has that money that you would actually decommission it fully?
Well, we do not have a cost estimate, an updated cost estimate associated with Pilgrim, so I really can't answer that question. That'll be part of the process that we go through. For comparison purposes, I think Vermont cost estimate for total decommissioning was about $1.25 billion.
Okay, we're gonna take another question from our callers.
Our next question comes from Jim Ostroff with Plaid. Your line is open.
Yes, yes, hi, Bill.
Hey, Jim.
Let me just ask here whether the actually really related issues, whether the shutdown of Pilgrim makes it much more likely that Fitzpatrick will have to shut because you have just one BWR to bear all the costs associated with operating going forward. And does this decision in any way affect the outlook for Indian Point?
Yeah, Jim, you know, it's a similar situation, very challenging market economics at Fitzpatrick. However, I would say, you know, we continue to be in discussions with New York State, and it's too premature to say what we will do at that site. As it relates to Indian Point, you know, there's really no correlation between Pilgrim and Indian Point. Indian Point is a dual unit site that's located in a very good area in New York and has a completely different financial profile.
Okay, Bobby? Yep.
Thank you. Bobby Clark, WATD, Plymouth. Sir, could you tell me and expand on the factors that might cause you to close the plant in 2017? Sure. And one other follow-up question, I promise. Did you give Town of Plymouth officials any advance notice?
Okay, as it relates to our the shutdown date, so let me explain how that works. We've made a commitment to ISO New England that we have committed the capacity out of Pilgrim through May 31st, 2019, and we fully intend to meet that commitment. There are options to meet that commitment, which could include purchasing capacity from another resource to replace the capacity with Pilgrim. There are also some uncertainties in the ISO New England tariff that have to be addressed about potentially a financial buyout of that obligation. Right now, we do not have clarity on either of those matters and tend to work very closely with ISO New England in a very constructive way to address that matter. As it relates to your second question on notifications, you know, I believe we provided the notification this morning. You have to keep in mind that we had employees to deal with, and they were our top priority to make sure that we talked to them first before addressing other stakeholders. And so I believe we contacted those individuals immediately after our discussions with our employees.
Janet Wu, WCBB.
You had some tough criticism of government policies that have, in your opinion, contributed to today's decision. Senator Edward Markey was just quoted a few minutes ago saying that Pilgrim is one of the worst power plants, if not the worst power plant in the United States. Do you have a comment or a reply or comment on that?
You know, first I'll respond to on the energy policies. You know, we have a different opinion of what's required to have a robust, competitive electric market. and we do not believe that the market that we operate in is a free, open market. When you have other folks making decisions on renewables, on preference power from Canada, on subsidization of gas pipelines, of excluding existing nuclear plants from a clean energy standard, you are basically picking winners and losers. And we don't think that is what a competitive market is intended to do. And we think there's unintended consequences. And those consequences are the shutdown of very viable facilities. As it relates to Senator Markey, I certainly respect Senator Markey's comments. I can assure him that we are working very hard to improve the operations of that facility and are fully committed to ensuring the safety of our employees and the public.
Do you disagree with him that it's the worst power plant in America?
I'm not sure what he's using as the basis for that. I know moving into column 4 is a concern, and so I believe that's probably the case. I think we've taken responsibility for that and saying that we need to improve the operation of our facility.
Question from the phone line?
Our next question comes from Matthew Bandick with SNL Financial. Your line is open.
Hi, thank you. Want to talk about the power price issue. Earlier this year, Entergy in June had a investor presentation where you all described yourselves as moderately bullish on power prices. Has anything happened that has changed that outlook? Because I think you said that you see sustained low power prices for facing Pilgrim.
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. We still believe that power prices are too low. We believe that the markets will recover somewhat, but even with that recovery, we do not believe that Pilgrim is financially viable. So as we look at any decision regarding our assets, we not only look at market price, but we also look at what we call our point of view on commodity pricing. And under both those scenarios, Pilgrim was not financially viable.
Peter, how?
Is there any range of power prices at which, if the market had recovered to that point where maybe we wouldn't be in this conversation right now?
You know, off the top of my head, I don't know what that is. Obviously, you know, last year when prices were $10 better, we were in a better situation. But I don't have the exact price of what would make that change. But obviously, we didn't think we could get there.
Peter. Just wait for the mic. Elizabeth. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Peter Howe with New England Cable News. Is there anything Governor Baker, Massachusetts legislature, ISO New England could do to get you to reconsider this decision, or do you not see that being in the cards?
You know, Peter, I really don't see that as being in the cards. So the way it works, when we made that retirement request yesterday, what we have effectively done is said we are not going to participate in the 2019 auction. As a result of that retirement, we also lose the interconnection rights with the facility. So trying to reverse that decision at some point in the future is extremely unlikely for a number of reasons.
Just state your name, please.
Laura Reckford from Cape Cod Broadcasting. Just on the timeline of notification, you told the employees this morning, then from going to the town of Plymouth, talking to them yesterday, making the decision that you needed to make for ISO. Did you start talking to government officials over the weekend? Because there was some rumors of this over the weekend.
You know, we did see the rumors. We had not notified anybody over the weekend about this decision, but I am aware of the rumors that were going around.
Right next to you.
Oh, thank you. Wow.
He was waiting for you.
You talk a lot about safety, and I'm sure that the people who live down here in Plymouth County, that would be the first thing they're thinking about. They've got this rating downgrade from the NRC. They've got a company that's losing a lot of money on this plant, and yet you say, we're going to do everything we can. What can you say on top of what you've already said to reassure people that they're safe?
Well, let me let our chief nuclear officer address that, as he's got full responsibility for that.
Safe operation is our first focus every day, and the challenges that have occurred over the last couple of years that resulted in our regulatory downgrade did not threaten the health and safety of the public. The health and safety of the public has been protected at all times. We intend to see that going forward. As part of the going forward between now and 2019, we are fully responding to the column 4 performance gaps that have resulted in the downgrade by the NRC. So every bit of that is fully factored in, an action plan is in place, and we have the right people in place to ensure that going forward, the health and safety of the public is protected, at all times.
And you had said there's a considerable sum of money that has to be spent in the next few years?
We have dedicated funds to be able to go do the improvements in performance that need to be done. Yes, there is money set aside for that.
Does anyone else have a question before we go to second questions? No? Okay. David Abel.
David Abel, Boston Globe again, thank you. So just to make it clear, the money set aside is the $45 to $60 million. That's just for the inspections, correct? And then if there are additional capital improvements that have to be made, my question is, how would that, if there are additional capital improvements that have to be made to deal with safety concerns for the column 4 status, is Entergy willing to spend anything it takes? I mean, it could be a $50 million, $100 million capital improvement. What would Entergy do if you find out in 6 months that in order to keep the plant operating, you have to spend $100 million?
My job is to ensure that the plant is operated safely, that there is not a threat to the health and safety of the public. And we will take whatever action that we have to ensure that the health and safety of the public is protected at all times. Now, a little bit of a clarification of the 45 to 60 is not just inspection. There is also, the way column 4 works, we do our own assessment of the performance gaps, and that is all built into the 45 to 60. So corrective actions are part of that 45 to 60, and we certainly can find things that we don't expect, but it will be an exhaustive review of our performance and any gaps that resulted in the column 4 performance.
But could there be a shutdown? But could there be a shutdown if there's a identification of a massive capital investment that has to be made? Could the shutdown come earlier than you guys expect?
John Dent and I will take the appropriate actions to ensure that the plant is safe.
We have a question on the phone.
Our next question comes from Bruce Mull with Commonwealth Magazine. Your line is open.
Thank you. You made this comment about state policies that pick winners and losers, and the Canadian and the subsidy of natural gas pipelines are things that are on the drawing board but not done yet. There are subsidies for renewables, but this last one you mentioned, excluding nuclear from the clean energy standards, are you saying that if your plant had qualified for renewable energy credits, you wouldn't be in this place today?
No, you can't pick any single one of these issues. It's a combination of a number of factors. What we're saying is that for a state clean energy standard to exclude existing nuclear, we think is inappropriate, since it's probably provides the most carbon-free generation of any resource in the region. And for other resources to be provided additional value associated with that, but to exclude an existing nuclear generator simply doesn't make sense. In the big scheme of things, if you look at the Clean Power Plan really won't work if existing nuclear generation is removed from the market, and that's just a practical reality.
Chris?
Since I'm from Cape Cod, I think Cape Codders and probably Plymouth people too are concerned over things that happened last winter, and they had also happened in 2013. In the winter with that switch yard, and it's pretty much been said that the switch yard needs a total overhaul. I think there was even talk of some utility taking it over. Can you tell us, as winter approaches, how you're going to address this now?
So we've looked at a number of different options, the switchyard, including potentially selling that switchyard to another entity. In the meantime, we have developed very specific processes where, based on certain weather conditions, we will take the unit out of service in order to ensure that we do not have any issues related to the plant. We will continue to utilize that. We utilized that last winter, and we'll utilize it going forward until we develop other mitigating strategies to address that issue.
Is there any other questions from the audience?
Laura Redford again from Cape Cod Broadcasting. In the course of decommissioning the plant, are you required to take the building down or just deal with the fuel rods and the hazmat?
No, eventually you take the whole facility down. That just comes later on in the process. The primary step is to remove the fuel.
Okay, just gonna take another from the phone line.
Our next question comes from Jim Ostroff with Platts. Your line is open.
Yes, Bill, you previously had talked about Palisades and mentioned it, different area, upstate. It faces its own challenges, but for now has a PPA. Is it, with this announcement today, is the outlook for Palisades any different going forward? You know, the balance of this decade or into the next one? And thank you.
Okay, Jim, right now Palisades has got a purchase power agreement in place. So it is financially viable, and I think that agreement expires in 2022. I think there's a number of factors that will impact, the situation with Palisades going forward. I think we're all well aware of the fact that there's going to be a substantial shutdown of coal generation in the Midwest. And that could improve Palisades' situation overall. So, from my perspective, that hasn't really changed. We really need to see how things progress over the next few years up in that market, to determine what units will be available and what role Palisades will play after the PPA.
Bruce?
Yes, Bruce Gilman from WBUR. You have what, $870 million in your decommissioning fund. You say Vermont is similar to this plant, Vermont Yankee. It's going to cost $1.2 billion.
Well, I said Vermont costs 1.25 for comparison purposes. We have to get a new estimate for this plant.
Yeah, correct. So let's say that's ballpark because they're very similar reactors. Where are you going to get the $330+ million to make up the shortfall?
The way that works is that you continue to build the trust fund up. You make investments in the trust fund that grows based on what what type of investments you make. And in fact, with Vermont Yankee, that's we go through and we look at various scenarios about what that growth in that fund will be, and at what time that fund is adequate to meet the total cost. So where those intersect is basically your high-level estimate of when you would begin the detailed, more comprehensive decommissioning process. And I think we provided a lot of detail on that in the VY decommissioning analysis that we provided to the public, but you can get a pretty good idea of how that works in that documentation.
So you're not going to take the 60 years. You think you'll have it in 5 to 10. You're not going to take 60 years to decommission this plant. It'd be 5 to 10.
I'm not sure what the basis of the 5 to 10 is.
Didn't you suggest that decommissioning would take 5 to 10 years basically?
Well, it'd take 5 to 10 years once you start. That's not from the shutdown. So you pick a date when you have adequate funds to meet the total cost, then you start, and then that takes 5 to 10 years depending on your approach.
So when do you think you'll start decommissioning?
We don't have an estimate of the cost, so we have not made that estimate at this point in time.
I have a question from that phone.
Our next question comes from Matthew Bannock with SNL Financial. Your line is open.
Hey, sorry, just wanted to clarify on the question I asked earlier. So when you say that you all still do believe there's going to be some increase in power prices in New England, but just not enough for Pilgrim. So does that mean that the forecast of being moderately bullish from earlier this year, is that still the same, or have there been any new factors this year that have made you all say, well, it looks like power prices aren't going to be as high as we thought they're going to be, and if so, I'd just be curious as to what those factors are.
Yeah, I think, we have modified our forecast. I don't remember when we specifically had talked to you, but we have modified our point of view, even over recent months. So while we're still bullish, it's probably less bullish than it was earlier this year.
Janet?
I don't mean to ask you the same question over and over again. I'm just trying to be accurate. You say that you've got 60 years to shut the plant down. Based on what you...
The NRC provides that provision.
Right, exactly. Based on what you know today, do you think it is going to take 60 years before you finally get rid of the building?
I don't believe that's going to be the case, but I can't say with any more specificity than that until we get a good detailed cost estimate.
Can you say that it's more like 30 or 40 years
No.
at least?
Do we have any phone? Okay. Take one more from you, Laura.
Laura Reckford from Cape Cod Broadcasting again. When do you think the layoffs would begin at Pilgrim? And given that there are 600 employees, do you have a sense of when the majority of layoffs would start? And is there a percentage that you believe you can rehire at other facilities?
Yeah, so the way it worked, I'll just give you something, an analogy to Vermont Yankee. So we will retain the full team at Pilgrim until we actually shut down the facility. Once you make that decision and it's actually shut down, your resource needs are about cut in half, okay? And at VY, then we took that half, and a lot of them decided to retire. They decided they didn't want to go anywhere else. And I believe we had probably about 100 or so folks that we were able to offer jobs to within the Entergy system. Keeping in mind that while the plant was operating, we also provided a very fair retention package to keep those folks at the site. And then as you go forward, that number continues to diminish over the years until you get all the fuel stored on the pad, and then you have a very small footprint that you have to protect. So, we have made a commitment as a company that we will make every effort to identify opportunities for those employees that are displaced, and we fully intend to do the same thing here at Pilgrim.
Any other? Okay. Any last questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Just quickly, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. We do have limited availability for a couple one-on-ones with Bill. If anyone is interested, please come see me. Additionally, across the hallway, we have a media room set up if you need to file stories or jump on your phone with food and refreshments. So, thank you again for coming. Appreciate it.
I just have a question.
I can help you. The independent system operator. So that would be fine. That would be fine. But I can get you Bobby.
Hey, Lauren?